My parents split. Everything between my brother and me, but the shocking message. They left me in their will, changed my life forever. The day I found out my brother had secretly manipulated our dying parents into changing their will was also the day I realized everything I knew about my family was a lie. I used to think we were the perfect family, not flashy or dramatic, just solid, reliable. You know the kind. Sunday dinners with roast chicken and mashed potatoes, arguments over board games that ended in laughter, birthday cards signed with love, and a few extra bucks folded inside. It was a rhythm I trusted, a rhythm I thought would last forever. I'm Emma, 32, born and raised in a small town just outside Chicago. I work in graphic design, freelance mostly, and I've always been the quiet one in the family. My brother Max is older, 36, charismatic, successful, the kind of guy who walks into a room and makes people feel like they already know him. He works in finance, wears watches that cost more than my rent, and somehow always makes people believe he's doing them a favor just by showing up. We were never close, but we weren't distant either. I guess cordial is the best word. Growing up, we fought like most siblings do, but there was never anything dark, at least not that I saw. Our parents, George and Marie, were the glue. They weren't rich, but they were smart with money. Dad worked as a civil engineer for 40 years. Mom was a schoolteacher turned antique shop owner. Together, they built a life full of values: honesty, fairness, love. So when they passed, first Mom, then Dad, just 6 months apart, I was devastated. Not just by the grief, but by the quiet, the strange, eerie silence that followed their absence. And then came the will. It was supposed to be simple, straightforward, split everything 50-50 between Max and me. That's what they always said. That's what they promised. That's what was fair. But when the lawyer read the document, I felt my stomach knot. Max got the house. Max got the savings account. Max got Mom's antique collection, Dad's coin vault, even the car. I got the lake cabin. The one that had been abandoned for over a decade, infested with mold and raccoons. And a letter, a sealed envelope with my name on it, handwritten in my mother's script. The room went quiet when I opened it. I remember the way Max avoided eye contact, how his foot tapped beneath the mahogany desk. The lawyer's lips moved, but I didn't hear him. All I heard was my mother's voice echoing in my mind as I read the first line of her letter. Emma, if you're reading this, then you've probably realized things aren't what they seem. I looked up at Max, and he smiled, tight-lipped, almost rehearsed. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. I didn't say anything to Max right then. I just folded the letter, slipped it into my coat pocket, and left the office. The lawyer called after me, asking if I had any questions, but I couldn't breathe, let alone talk. Out in the cold, January wind slicing through my coat, I sat in my car with shaking hands and unfolded the letter again. Emma, if you're reading this, your father and I are gone, and I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I know the will may feel unfair, but there are things you don't know. Things I couldn't say aloud while we were still alive. Things about Max. Please don't trust him. Not yet. Start with the cabin. My heart dropped. My mother, gentle, rational, loving, was warning me against my own brother. And not just warning, pleading. I sat there for a long time, staring at the ink like it might rearrange itself into something less horrifying. What could Max have done? Why would she write this? Was this some kind of mistake? A bad joke? But the way she underlined "don't trust him," that wasn't a joke. That was fear. Still, I tried to rationalize it. Grief messes with people. Maybe Mom had been confused. Maybe Dad wrote the final draft of the will, and Mom didn't agree. Maybe Max had already talked to them and convinced them of something behind my back. I wanted so badly to believe there was an explanation that didn't end in betrayal. But the signs were there, little ones I'd ignored. Like how Max refused to let me see Dad during his last few days, saying, "He's too tired. You'll just upset him." Or how Mom stopped calling me altogether in the final weeks, which I thought was just the pain medication, clouding her mind. Or how Max handled the funeral arrangements entirely on his own and told me the dates last minute, barely giving me time to fly back. At the time, I chalked it up to stress, to being the distant sibling who didn't show up enough. But now it felt like a pattern. Now it felt like a setup. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake in my apartment, staring at the ceiling while the heater clicked and groaned. In the morning, I called Max. He picked up on the second ring, voice smooth as ever. "Hey, little sis. Crazy day yesterday, huh?" "I have a question," I said, trying to sound calm. "Why did Mom only leave me the lake cabin?" A pause. Too long. Then, "She said you liked it up there. Thought it was fitting. Look, I know it seems unfair, but she also left me a letter," I interrupted. Silence. "A letter?" he echoed. "Yeah, one that said I shouldn't trust you." That silence again, this time colder. Then he chuckled, like I'd said something ridiculous. "Emma, she was dying, probably not in her right mind. You know how Mom got toward the end, dramatic." But she wasn't dramatic. She was careful, precise, and Max's dismissive tone just confirmed what I already felt in my gut. He was hiding something, and if the truth was at the cabin, I had to go there. The drive to the lake cabin was long, winding through stretches of frozen countryside that felt almost suspended in time. The roads were slick with snowmelt, and with every mile my anxiety thickened. We hadn't been to the cabin in over 10 years. It used to be our summer escape. S'mores by the fire, Dad chopping wood shirtless, Mom humming while she cleaned fish on the porch. Max and I would fight over the top bunk, then spend the afternoons daring each other to swim out to the far buoy. But as we grew up, the visits stopped. Life got in the way, and the cabin, once alive with warmth, became forgotten, left to rot, like a memory no one wanted to keep. When I pulled up, the roof was sagging. One window had been shattered and boarded up. Dead leaves piled up against the steps like a silent warning. But the key still worked. Inside, the smell hit me first: mildew, dust, and something older. Decay. The couch was covered in a tarp. The kitchen cabinets hung open. A raccoon had clearly made the attic home. I stood in the center of the room, letter still folded in my coat pocket, and whispered, "Okay, Mom. I'm here. Now what?" At first, I didn't know where to start. I opened drawers, flipped cushions, checked under the beds. Nothing, just dust and junk. But then I remembered something. Beneath the rug in the main room, there used to be a loose floorboard. Max and I used to hide candy in there. I pulled back the rug, heart pounding, and pried it up with the edge of a rusty fireplace poker. There it was, a small compartment beneath the floor. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was a black notebook. I opened it. At first glance, it looked like Mom's handwriting. Tight cursive, always with a blue pen. The first page was dated almost a year before she died. "I don't know how to tell Emma what's happening." I overheard Max speaking to someone on the phone. It sounded off. He said something about moving assets, about hiding the old ones before she notices. I asked him about it the next day. He lied to my face. I flipped through the pages, hands trembling. It wasn't just one entry, it was dozens. Mom had been documenting things for months. Strange withdrawals from their account, missing jewelry, moments when Max intercepted phone calls meant for me. She even mentioned a visit from a notary who wasn't who he claimed to be. She had tried confronting Dad, but he brushed it off. Max is just helping with the finances, he said. Don't make a big deal. But Mom didn't let it go. He's charming, convincing, but he's hiding something. If anything happens to us, Emma needs to know. She needs to see what he's done. That line stuck with me. It echoed in my skull, because suddenly the will made sense. Max had gotten close. Too close. He'd inserted himself into their affairs, manipulated their trust while they were at their weakest, and made himself the golden son. And me? I was cut out. Quietly. Neatly. Except for the letter. Except for this notebook. I sat on the dusty floor for a long time, holding the truth in my hands. Max had stolen from our parents, maybe more than money. He had stolen their voice. And now it was up to me to make sure they were finally heard. I didn't leave the cabin that night. I lit a fire with damp wood and sat there rereading every page of my mother's notebook, searching for details I might have missed. The entries were fragmented, emotional, but they painted a picture. Max had been planning something for a long time, and my parents didn't stop him. Either because they couldn't, or because they never realized how far he'd go. But now, with Mom and Dad both gone, what did it matter? What could I do with this? The notebook wasn't a legal document. It was just words, feelings, accusations, and Max was smart. He had always been the one who knew how the world worked. He had connections, lawyers, influence. Me? I had some scribbles in a moldy cabin, but I couldn't let that stop me. So the next day, I drove back into town. I scanned the pages of the journal, documented everything, and made multiple copies. One for myself, one for a safe deposit box, and one that I emailed to myself using a backup account. If Max ever tried to shut me up, I needed insurance. Then I did something even harder. I told my aunt. She was Mom's sister, the closest thing I had left to family. Sweet, cautious, religious, to a fault. When I showed her the notebook, she took it with trembling hands and read in silence. And when she finished, she looked at me and said, "I think your mother was confused, maybe even paranoid near the end." I stared at her, stunned. "You think she made it up?" She was sick, Emma. She was dying. That can do strange things to the mind. And Max? He loved her. He took care of them both. You weren't around. You don't know what it was like. It hit me like a slap. Not just the words, but the judgment behind them. I wasn't around. I was the daughter who called every week but didn't fly home often enough. The one who sent birthday flowers instead of showing up in person. The one who stayed behind when Max moved in and played hero. And now I was accusing him, without evidence that a court would accept. I left her house feeling humiliated, powerless, but also angry. Because deep down I knew Max counted on this, on people assuming he was the golden boy, on me being the emotionally distant one. He'd built his whole scheme on appearances, and no one wanted to question them. That night I texted Max. Me. "I went to the cabin. I found the notebook. We need to talk." No reply. An hour passed, then 2. Finally, around midnight, I got a message. "Max, don't do this, Emma. You're only going to hurt yourself." Not, "That's not true." Not, "What are you talking about?" Just a warning. The next morning, I found my car tires slashed. I knew. This wasn't just family drama anymore. It was war. I stood in the freezing cold, staring at the jagged gashes across all 4 tires, like they were a signature. Max's silent way of saying, "Stay in your lane." There were no footprints in the snow, no cameras on the street, just the soft, deliberate violence of someone who knew exactly how to rattle me without leaving a trace. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, breathing in the icy air, and promised myself this wasn't going to stop me. If anything, it was confirmation. Max was scared. But still, I was alone. No one believed me. My friends offered sympathy, but no one wanted to get involved in family business. And I couldn't go to the police with a notebook of handwritten suspicions and a set of flat tires. So, I did the only thing I could. I dug deeper. I went back through Mom and Dad's financial records, using old logins I still had access to. It took hours, days, really, but patterns started to form. Large transfers to accounts I didn't recognize. Discrepancies between their known income and what they supposedly had left. Even a document authorizing Max to act on their behalf that looked off. The signature wasn't Mom's, not exactly. Close enough to pass a quick glance, but I'd seen her sign hundreds of report cards and birthday checks. This one lacked the little tail on the M she always added, like a flourish. Forgery, or at least manipulation. I needed more. Something stronger. So I drove to the assisted living facility where Dad had spent his final weeks. I asked questions, polite ones at first, then firmer. A nurse finally gave in, whispering that Max had limited visitors toward the end. Claimed Dad got confused easily and Emma only upset him. I asked for visitor logs. She said they were confidential. I asked about cameras. She shrugged, nervous, so I changed tactics. I pretended I was working on a memorial video and asked if they had any recordings of my dad speaking. Miraculously, they had one, a staff interview meant for families to keep. They gave me a USB. That night I watched it. Dad looked frail, his voice slow, but clear. Emma, my Emma. I hope she's doing okay. I haven't seen her in a while. Max says she's busy, but I don't know. She always used to call. I miss her. He didn't sound confused. He sounded isolated, and that's when it hit me. Max hadn't just stolen money. He'd stolen me from them. He'd cut me out while they were dying, rewriting our story, turning me into the absent daughter, the one who didn't care. And once the illusion was complete, he took everything: the money, the house, their final moments, their memories, their love. I left the USB playing on repeat while I packed. The apartment felt smaller than ever. Every shadow seemed to whisper what I'd lost: my parents, my identity, the version of me who still believed family meant protection. That version was gone now. Grief had carved her out, and rage had filled the space she left behind. I wasn't going to beg Max for the truth anymore. I was going to expose him, but I needed distance. Somewhere I could think, rebuild, and plan without him watching. So I left the city, disappeared. I booked a month-long stay at a quiet rental 2 states away under a fake name. Emma died the day I found that notebook. I introduced myself as Claire to the woman who handed me the key. Claire didn't flinch. Claire didn't cry. Claire got to work. I created a folder called The Fall of Max Whitmore. Inside it, I dumped everything: financial spreadsheets, screenshots of bank transfers, copies of the forged documents, scans of Mom's notebook, Dad's video. Piece by piece, I stitched the story together, not just for the police or the court, but for the world. Because if Max thrived on appearances, I'd destroy him with the one thing he couldn't control: perception. I knew I couldn't trust the system. Max probably had connections. But public pressure? Scandal? A viral narrative with a grieving daughter and a beloved father's final words? That was power. So I reached out to a journalist, an old college friend. Her name was Lila. We hadn't spoken in years, but I remembered her doggedness, and more importantly, her obsession with injustice. When I told her what I had, she went quiet for a full minute. Then she said, "Email it. All of it. Tonight." I hesitated. "If you publish this, Max will come for me," I whispered. "He already has," she said. "This time, be ready." The next few days were a blur of late-night calls, fact-checking, and preparing statements. Lila warned me it might take time, but she was in. Her editor approved the story for a Sunday front-page expose. I thought I would feel powerful, vindicated. But that night, I lay awake, and something strange crept in. Guilt. Was I really doing this for justice? Or revenge? Was I honoring my parents? Or just trying to punish the person who stole them from me? But then I remembered Dad's voice on that USB. Soft, tired, confused, and Mom's scrawl in the journal. "If anything happens, Emma needs to know." This wasn't revenge. This was closure. And I would see it through, even if it meant burning everything along the way. I returned home on a Friday. The article was scheduled to go live Sunday morning, but I couldn't wait. I needed to see him. I needed him to see me, not the girl he erased from our parents' memories, not the sister he thought would quietly fade away, but the woman who was about to set fire to the lies he built his life on. I wore black, not because I was mourning, but because it felt like armor. When he opened the door to his penthouse, smug, barefoot, sipping coffee, his entire body froze, just for a second. Then he smiled, like a reflex. "Emma," he said slowly, "you look, well." I stepped inside without asking. "You shouldn't be here," he added, voice dropping. Too late. I laid the manila envelope on his kitchen counter. "Everything I know, everything I found, every lie you told." He didn't touch it. "Is this supposed to scare me?" he said, almost amused. This is to warn you." He laughed, that soft, pitying laugh I used to mistake for affection. "You think people are going to believe a notebook? A few statements from nurses? Dad was practically a ghost at the end. Mom was paranoid. You were gone. The whole time, Emma. Because you made sure of it." The mask slipped. Just a flicker. But I saw it. The way his jaw tightened. The way his hand curled around the coffee mug like he wanted to throw it. "You think this changes anything?" he hissed. "You want justice?" "There's no justice, Emma. Only strategy. You were always the sentimental one. The weak one." I walked up to him, slow and steady. "No, Max. I was the loyal one, the one who actually cared. But you're about to find out what weakness really looks like. It's you, standing there, realizing you're not in control anymore." He didn't say a word as I left, just stood there, seething. The next morning I received a message from Lila. "It's up. Front page. Full story." Comments are flooding in. I opened the article. "The Golden Sun. How a beloved brother orchestrated a family betrayal for millions." There were photos, quotes from the facility staff, expert analysis of the forged documents. Even Dad's video, embedded right in the middle. It went viral within hours. Max's name was trending by noon. His office issued a cold, generic statement. By evening, he'd locked all his social media accounts. People dug up old photos, rumors, whispers about shady deals. Reporters parked outside his condo. And me? I stood in the middle of my apartment, watching it all unfold, and felt nothing. No victory, no joy. Just a silence I couldn't explain. Because even though I'd won the battle, I knew the war had already cost me something I couldn't ever get back. In the days that followed, I watched my brother's life unravel like a poorly stitched lie. The media hounded him. His company issued a suspension. Investigators started digging, not just into the forged documents, but into his entire financial history. Quiet whispers turned into loud questions. Old friends distanced themselves. Even our aunt, the one who once dismissed me, called with a trembling voice. "Emma, I'm sorry. I didn't know." But the apology didn't land. It didn't matter anymore. I had crossed too many bridges to look back. Max tried to contact me once. He left a voicemail, his voice stripped of the usual arrogance. Just a low, broken tone. "I didn't mean to shut you out. I was scared. I didn't want to lose everything." I didn't reply, because I had already lost everything. I had no parents to call, no childhood home to return to, no brother to protect me. Just screenshots and court filings, headlines and silence. I moved out of the city, packed everything I owned into 2 suitcases, and drove until I found a town where no one knew my name. I rented a quiet apartment above a bookstore, bought myself a secondhand desk, and tried to live like the world hadn't cracked beneath me. But even in peace, the echoes stayed. Sometimes I'd hear my dad's voice in dreams, calling out for me. Sometimes I'd smell my mom's perfume when the wind shifted. Sometimes I'd look at old photos and wonder when exactly the fracture began. Was there ever a moment I could have stopped it? Should I have been there more? Called more? Loved harder? Guilt is a shapeshifter. It doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just sits with you while you drink your coffee. Quiet, patient, waiting. One evening, I found myself scrolling through the article again. I wasn't sure why. Maybe I needed to remind myself it was real, that I hadn't imagined it all. As I read, I noticed a comment that I'd missed before. "Thank you for speaking up. I was in a similar situation. My brother forged my father's will too. Everyone thought I was crazy. You gave me courage." I stared at the words, tears blurring the screen. Maybe I hadn't saved my family, but maybe I'd saved someone else. And maybe that was enough. It's strange how life keeps going, even when yours feels like it's stopped. There's no dramatic music, no closure montage, just mornings that come whether you're ready or not, and nights that ask you to sleep with the weight of things left unsaid. I still think about my parents. Some days I replay the sound of their laughter, the way Mom used to cut peaches on the porch, or how Dad hummed old songs while fixing broken hinges. Those memories don't hurt as much now, not like they used to. They feel softened like sea glass, once sharp, now worn by time. I never heard from Max again, not after that voicemail. He vanished from public view. Last I read, the investigations were still ongoing. Maybe he'll face prison. Maybe he won't. But the punishment wasn't really about the law. It was being seen, exposed, stripped of the mask he wore so well. I think the worst thing you can do to someone who lives for image is force them to face their true reflection. As for me, I stayed in that quiet town longer than I expected. I worked part-time at the bookstore below my apartment, read more, wrote more. I even started therapy, something I never thought I'd need or admit to. Healing isn't dramatic. It's not some big cinematic moment where you scream into the void and suddenly feel whole. It's small, quiet, sometimes invisible. It's saying no to guilt that doesn't belong to you. It's learning how to miss someone without needing them back. It's forgiving yourself for not being the hero in everyone's version of the story. And it's realizing that scars don't make you broken, they make you real. One night, I lit a candle and reread my mother's letter. The first one. The one that started all of this. "Emma, If you're reading this, then you've probably realized things aren't what they seem. She was right. They weren't. But what she didn't say, what she couldn't say, was that sometimes the greatest gift a parent can leave their child isn't money or property or praise. It's truth. Even when it hurts. Even when it burns down everything around it. Even when it leaves you alone. Because from truth, we build something stronger, something ours. I folded the letter, placed it back in its envelope, and tucked it away in a locked drawer. Not to hide it, but to honor it. And then I turned off the light and let the silence be just that. Silence. Not a wound, not a warning. Just peace. Not every scar needs to fade. Some should stay, to remind us that even broken things can carry the truth.